Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jay Anderson, Communications Manager here at Colorado Springs Utilities. And at Colorado Springs Utilities, we start most meetings with a safety moment. So in case of an evacuation or something unexpected tonight, you'll follow the green lighted exit signs. The natural flow out of the building will take you out the way that you came in. Across over there, across Clyde Way near Mountain Lion Stadium, we can reconvene just so everybody knows what we'll do. A quick note about the format this evening. You've been directed into this theater so that we can have a focused conversation with you about net metering. Out in the lobby, we've had several stations set up to help other customers and you understand how you can be successful with the energy-wise time of day rates. These two concepts are linked. They both relate to how and when energy is used, but they're not the same. You're here tonight because you participate in net metering, which means you exchange energy in two directions with Colorado Springs Utilities. That's a different relationship than simply consuming energy from the grid, and it deserves a dedicated conversation. We know this topic is personal. Many of you have made significant investments in solar, and you care deeply about your energy choices and your bills, and your role in building the future. Tonight's presentation will walk through the proposed changes to our net metering program, what's changing, why it's changing, and how it affects different types of customers. After the presentation, I'll be moderating a discussion with our Chief Financial Officer and Rate Design Lead to address many of the questions that you submitted in advance. Because of the number of attendees and the unique nature of each household's energy setup, from solar panels to battery storage to electric vehicles, we won't be able to take individual questions from the audience tonight in this theater. But we absolutely want to hear from you and help you understand how these changes apply to your specific situation. That's why on every slide tonight you'll see a QR code that links to a form where you can start that conversation with us. Whether you have questions about your bill, your system, or your options moving forward, we're here to help. You've seen the same QR code if you've visited any of the stations outside with a flyer with that QR code on it. The questions and comments that you submitted with your RSVPs have been incredibly helpful. We've reviewed them all, and we've distilled them into key themes that will guide our moderated discussion after the presentation. Thank you again for showing up, for engaging, and for helping us build a better energy future together. And with that, I want to get into the presentation. Our Chief Financial Officer, Tristan Gearhart, will share with you, and then we'll move to those moderated question and answers. Tristan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tristan Gearhart. I'm the Chief Planning and Financial Officer for Colorado Springs Utilities. I really do appreciate everyone making time to be out here tonight, taking time out of their busy schedules to come and have an opportunity to have this discussion. You know, I've had the opportunity to touch base with many of you directly, and based on the size of this audience, I know that this is an important topic, and we do take it seriously. I appreciate all of the direct feedback that has come to me. I also appreciate all of you being here tonight, making your voice known on this subject. The intent of the presentation that I have for you tonight is really to go over and explain the cost that we have as an organization that we see for our customers, specifically how those apply to our net metering customers, and some of the challenges that we're facing from an overall rate and pricing standpoint, as well as to give some more information regarding our proposed net metering rate changes that will be before City Council. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and jump right in. The first thing that I'd like everybody to think about is just a dollar that you spend as a residential customer on your electricity. I'd like to be maybe even just a little bit more specific inside of that and say that this is a non-fuel dollar, meaning this isn't the same dollar that you spend on your electric cost adjustment or those costs that go out there to buy natural gas or coal that run our plants. It's really everything that's non-fuel based when you look at this dollar that is spent by the utilities. So as that dollar comes from customers and is spent by the utilities, what is it spent on? It breaks down into really three different categories that we have. I have those listed on this slide. The first category is energy costs. That makes up about 22 cents of a dollar. The next category is customer cost. That makes up about 30 cents of that dollar that goes into the utilities. And the last cost is demand cost. That makes up about 48 cents of that dollar. Altogether, that makes up the entire dollar that we're talking about, but I do want to jump in each of those categories just a little bit further to give some explanation of the types of things that we have that are costs in those categories. When you look at that first 22 cents that's related to energy costs, these are items that really vary based on the amount of usage that goes across our system, based on a customer's use of kilowatt hours. So if you think of things from a generation standpoint, perhaps I could put this in terms of a natural gas generator. That natural gas generator requires maintenance, and that maintenance is at set intervals in many cases. Those set intervals have to do with run hours. Those run hours tie directly to the number of kilowatt hours that are being used by our customers. So more kilowatt hours that go through that generator means more maintenance that has to go on. The cost varies then based on how much kilowatt hour usage is going through that system of generation. Transmission lines. So as we look at our transmission lines, you'll notice that in some of these categories, we have these types of costs in several different of the categories. As we look at those per kilowatt hour types of costs that are there for transmission, this would have to do with the lines that really go from those larger resources, plant assets in our interconnected grid that go to feed distribution at a lower level from there. So those transmission costs that are really energy-based are more around maintenance, the crews that we have put in place that have to go out and repair lines when they go down, that have to be able to replace lines as they reach their end of normal life. And again, some of that is based on how much you use those lines. After a certain amount of electricity goes through them, you may need to replace them on a cycle. The last item that we have in the energy cost there is surplus payments to the city. And as a municipal entity, we are not for profit. We operate on that basis, but one of the things that is required by our city code and by certain regulations that we have is a certain amount per kilowatt hour that goes back to the city for any inside city usage. And really that's an advantage to the city general fund of having a municipal utility that's in our midst. So looking at things from the energy costs, that's really kind of the breakout that we see there, the types of costs that we have in those categories. If we look at the per customer costs, these are costs that really relate to how many customers we have on our system. We have approximately 260,000 customers that are part of our electric system. About 216,000 of those are residential customers. When we look at that, we need to have a billing system that's in place to be able to ultimately bill for the services that we're putting out there. That requires IT, that requires all of the system maintenance that goes into that, but we can look at all of those costs in total and say how many customers do we have and how do we charge those back out then on that basis. The last category then as other costs that we have in the per customer cost are distribution lines. So again, each customer requires a line that goes from transformers directly to their service location. Those are per customer costs. Again, we can see how many direct connections we have and charge those on a per customer basis. Service lines and meters. So every customer has a meter at their location. Those meters, again, are something that we can look at and divvy up customer by customer from a total cost standpoint. The last category of costs that we have are demand costs. The demand costs, again, contain generation costs, but these are different generation costs than what you see in the energy side of things. This is, and again, if we go back to that natural gas turbine scenario, this is how many of those do we need to be able to meet the full demand of all of our customers when they draw on the electric system. So if we need 6 natural gas, simple start natural gas units at the Drake site, that's what goes into that cost. How many of those do we have to be able to build in total to be able to cover the full amount of electricity that is used at any point in time at that highest use for our system? Making sure that we don't have brownouts, that we don't have any of those kind of things that are going on. We have a fully reliable system. These are demand types of costs that are out there that make sure that our system is resilient and reliable. So transmission costs also fit into this category, again, as we look at both from the interconnected grid and our plants. Do we have the transmission lines sized appropriately? Does it require a 120 kilovolt line or a 240 kilovolt line? We have to build that in based on the total amount that's coming at that peak time from our customers that we need to be able to serve. And ultimately, we see that as a demand kind of cost that's there to cover peak usage by our customers. Distribution lines, as well as substations. So we need transformers, we need substations, we need enough of those in place that once again, we can cover all of the peak energy use that happens from all 260,000 of our customers. Now, if you look at that full dollar and how we charge that out to customers, in our current rates that are set up, the customer costs are billed out in our access and facility charges per day. That's a daily charge that we have that's on your bill. It goes out in that manner. It's per day, all of those costs broken down into a per day charge. If you look at the other two buckets that we have there of energy costs and demand costs, we collect both of those currently through per kilowatt hour usage. So through all of our customers' usage, we look at the total cost to serve all of our customers and recover those through the per kilowatt hour basis. Some of that's what we'll be talking about later on tonight as we look at some of the changes and some of the obstacles that really make that difficult when we talk about net metering and being able to collect fully all of the types of costs that we have that are there. Any opportunity to turn up the volume a little bit? Thank you. Try to hold it a little closer to my mouth as well. So from here, what I wanted to talk about next is really what has happened with solar use from a net metering customer standpoint in Colorado Springs. The chart that you see here, the purple line, indicates at the end of each year how many total net metering customers do we have on Colorado Springs utility system. And what I'd like to highlight for everyone is from 2006, the first year that we had customers on our net metering, to about 2016 or 2017, we were less than 1,000 customers that had signed up for this rate. If you look at that period of time, it was about 90 customers a year, if you average that across the 2006 to 2017 timeframe, about 90 customers a year that are signing up. What we see from 2018 through today is that the slope of that line greatly increases. And the number of customers that have been signing up as net metering customers has greatly expanded. What was 90 customers per year signing up is now closer to 900 to 1,000 customers a year that are signing up to be net metering customers. There's a lot of this that is based on incentives that are out there. There's a lot that is based on the solar industry and just price points in general that are related to that. As we began the program, really a lot of what was put in place at that time was to give it an advantage to make sure that we had rates that would support folks being able to see coming onto the net metering system. 2022 was the last year that we had any incentive that went along because we see net metering as being established, that other incentives were out there that were available, and that the number of customers signing up was much greater. What I would also mention is the impacts that we see from rates that we are collecting from net metering customers to the overall allocated cost. If there was a difference in those amounts that was out there, a subsidy that was going on, it's much different when you're looking at a few hundred customers that may be participating in that versus 9,000 customers that are participating in that.
What is net metering?
And again, net metering, referring to anyone that is participating in our solar program, solar that you've installed at your location behind the meter. Rooftop solar being the main way that we see folks normally connecting up their systems. All right, moving on from here, what I would like to be able to discuss with everyone is just what we see as kind of an average net metering rooftop solar customer. And what I'd like to do is describe this on an average summer day that we would see in our system. So the first thing I'd like to highlight here is this is 24 hours in a day. The lines that you see, I'd like to talk about the yellow line that you see on this chart first. The yellow line indicates for a solar net metering customer, what does their production look like from those panels that they have throughout the course of 24 hours. And what you'll notice from this is there's no generation. It's at that zero line when the sun is not up. So if we start at the beginning of the day and go until about 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning, that's when we see the first time that the sun is up and it's starting to hit customers' solar panels and producing energy. What we see from there is that the line continues to go up at a rapid rate as the sun continues on its angle. It's hitting more and more of your panels at a higher and hotter rate. What that is doing is generating more electricity, and that peaks out somewhere right in the middle part of the day. From there, the sun starts to set, and as it goes through that setting process, it may be hitting less of your panels. What we really see is during the sometime between on a summer day, sometime between 6 and 7 for an average solar customer, they have no more usage that is coming from or no more generation that is coming from their solar panels. Now, I would like to highlight that this is a typical solar customer that has no battery storage along with that system. So when we look at things then from a net usage standpoint, which is the other line that is on this chart, this is what we see an average residential solar customer looks like. So from a usage standpoint, through the early part of the morning, there's not a lot of usage that's going on at a solar customer's location. And what we see as that solar generation, as the sun comes up and is starting to generate on panels, is what we begin to see is negative net usage. In other words, the panels are producing more energy than is being used at the location. Now, that continues as the sun's up and throughout that period of time, but it starts to go back down from a net usage standpoint as customers get to that period of the day where the sun is starting to set. And once again, what we see in the evening hours after those panels go down for a customer that doesn't have a battery backup system that is there, somewhere in that 6 to 8 period of time, the panels will not be producing energy anymore, and the peak usage just looks like somewhere around 1.5 to 2 kilowatt hours that's being used during that peak time. We've highlighted on this chart as well 5 to 9 p.m. because that's really where we're seeing our peak usage as a entity, which is why we are rolling forward with energy-wise time of day rates, and really why we're looking at these changes to net metering as well. What I would like to very much highlight on this chart is as your solar panels stop producing in the evening hours, if you don't have solar or storage that is connected to that battery storage that's connected to your solar, that amount of usage that we see in that peak period of time is very close to what we see from all of our other non-solar customers that is out there. So from a demand standpoint, we talked about we need to build to that peak part of our system that's out there. When your solar panels are not producing energy, we still need to be able to back up all of that use that you're going to ask from us as an organization to back up the electric use that's going on. And there's not, and during that on-peak period, there's at least a part where it is looking very much like all of our non-solar customers, and we have to build our system large enough in all of those areas to be able to support that usage. Sorry, we are looking at this from a residential customer basis. I'm happy to take some questions, use the QR code and bring those up from a commercial customer. Low profiles do look different based on customers, commercial versus residential, but understanding that we're speaking primarily to our residential customers in the low profile that we have here.
So where did the power go that was generated all day long? Did you just let that go by?
Sold it to someone else.
So in the middle part of the day, as we see that additional generation that's there, it is being used by the system. It is feeding the grid. From a total demand standpoint, what I want to focus on, and we'll hear about this a few different times as we talk about it, those hours are banked from what you're doing on your billing side of things, but that generation is not available during the peak time unless you have a battery that's connected to your system. So while you may be feeding the grid during the middle part of the day, that same generation, unless you have storage that's on your system, is not there in the evening peak hours that we have when our cost structure is much different.
And that affects your maintenance costs.
So, as we look at our system costs throughout the day, so we just talked about what usage looks like for a typical net metering customer. This is what our system costs look like throughout the day. And what we're seeing is this is much different than it has been in the years past when we have generation that is around the clock. What we see now is a market that is full of renewables that drive the cost down in the middle part of the day. Part of that is net metering. We have about 50 megawatts worth of generation that is coming from net metering solar customers in what we see that's out there. And again, from that usage profile, that's contributing to the lower cost in the middle part of the day. The other thing that we're seeing in the middle part of the day is we are able to go out and we have agreements in place to purchase from large utility scale solar facilities that also produce energy in that part of the day. But for any of those renewable resources that we're looking at, they become unavailable once the sun goes down. And once that happens, we are backing up our system using the resources that can reliably provide energy during that time of day. So in that 5 to 9 period of time, which we are highlighting as the on-peak period, we are out generating electricity using things like natural gas and other resources to make sure that we can cover the electric needs of the system. There's not stored in any material way the usage that is coming from either net metering customers or from the utilities. We do have 100 megawatts of battery storage that we brought online in the last year. We have plans for another 100 megawatts, but we have to balance that out from the total cost that come from that storage that we buy as a utility into the entire economics of this equation that we're looking at. Really what we're facing right now as an organization, part of the reason we have gone to energy-wise time of day rates is the structure is so much different at different parts of the day. And we want to be sending the message to all of our customers, solar and non-solar customers, that anything you can do to shift use from the on-peak period into those less expensive part of the day is the types of things and behavior that we want to be able to see. From a total use of energy, we're not as concerned about it as we are from the time that you're using on electricity because the cost structure is so much different.
What would that chart look like with that no solar stuff? The peak would be
Why were batteries essential?
Yeah, so costs are lower in the middle part of the day because of the 50 megawatts that we have of rooftop solar. Just for comparison's sake, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, we have about 290 megawatts of solar generation that's coming from solar farms in the area. That generation contributes much more to that middle part of the day cost that's going on. One of the things to highlight as well is just the overall way that this looks. So when we now take the load profile that we see from solar customers, our net metering solar customers, and look at the cost that we have there, again, as solar panels are coming off in the evening, that is the point in time that we have our highest cost. It is also the time that there's not generation coming from your solar panels. We are now seeing generation that we are covering using all of our same resources that we have for all 260,000 of our customers. We need to be able to make sure that we build a system that's reliable, that we're not going to see outages, that we're going to be able to deliver for the needs of our customers, but that is more expensive in that on-peak period that's there. And from an overall system benefit, we're not seeing a big step down because of solar that's there, either solar from our solar farms or from net metering customers, because we don't have energy that is coming from those resources during our most expensive period of time.
Yeah, but from the 2019 EIRA, it was supposed to be backed up by batteries. That was the agreement that was made.
So as we look at, again, at our system cost here versus the solar exchange, what's happening in that middle part of the day is most of our solar customers, if you look at that average customer again, they're banking energy. They're putting energy out onto the grid. From a net metering standpoint, we call it net metering because we take the nets plus and minus. So if you over-generate in the middle part of the day, those kilowatt hours are available for when you're not generating.
You will change it, right? This is changing.
Why
The
don't I
kilowatt
hook
hours
up
that
to
are
the
banked
grid
in the middle
period?
part of the day are then exchanged during that higher cost period of the day. So what we see is going on is we are crediting kilowatt hours at the most expensive time of the day for the least expensive part of the day. What this is leading to is a subsidy that is happening. And again, looking at
We're
9,000
subsidizing
customers
your
that are
maintenance
there,
costs.
there is rates that are not being covered by net metering customers. So as we've seen this condition continue, what we see is about $5.5 million each year that is not being covered inside of the rates we are collecting for net metering customers. We are a not-for-profit utility. What that means is the rest of the customers, the rest of the 260,000 customers are covering that $5.5 million shortfall.
Neural says
They had you off
Our information on the load studies, everything that we've put out there is intended to address that. As the CFO for the utility, my obligation is to make sure that we are setting up rates that are fair for all 260,000 of our customers. And if we have costs that are coming from one group being covered by another, that is a subsidy and something that we're not able to be able to support as an organization.
This is a classic bait and switch.
We are investors.
It's supposed to be a 1-for-1. Every one I give you, you give me one back. Even.
So looking at, again, from what we're seeing in net generation, or what we're seeing from a generation that comes from large utility scale solar is also contributing to this subsidy that we're seeing. So again, in the middle part of the day, the way our current rates are set up, billed on a per kilowatt hour basis, we're paying 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour for the generation that's generated in excess.
And how much is that going to data centers?
At the same time, we are paying about 2 cents to 3 cents for the generation we are getting from these large utility scale solar farms that are out there. In fact, in our interconnected grid, there is so much solar that's out there in that middle part of the day, in the 9 to 1 p.m. time frame, that we have some utilities that are reaching out to our energy trading group and saying they will give us their solar for free if we will pay the transmission costs to bring it to Colorado Springs. All of that to say that the cost that we have now for 290 megawatts that we have available to us from agreements we have in place, as well as other opportunities that we have through our trading group to be able to get low-cost solar, there's much more opportunity to get that at a lower price than what we're seeing from net metering customers, which again puts us in a disadvantage from being able to look at the total cost of the rates that are being charged to solar customers, net metering customers, and what the cost allocations are. We're not the only organization that has a subsidy that is there when it comes to what's happening with solar customers, net metering customers. Our outside consultant, a rate industry expert, the Brattle Group, went through and looked at many different entities to show what their cost structure currently looks like and any subsidy that may be going on across those entities. So looking across all of these entities that show on the screen right now, you'll notice Colorado Springs Utilities is right about in the middle of that. The orange bar that is there for Colorado Springs, looking on a per customer basis, we're right around $50 a customer of subsidy that's happening. If you take our 9,000 customers, about $50 per month per customer, that equals the $5.5 million that I was speaking to in the rate shortfall from net metering customers that is being covered by our other customers.
So are these studies published because they're in direct conflict with the U.S. government NERL?
So, as we talk about, again, that dollar that is being coming in from our customers for the costs that are out there, what we see is that same dollar that's there. What we see from the way our current rate structure is set up is it's difficult for us to be able to recover all of the demand-related costs that are happening when solar panels are not producing energy during that period of time. And our answer to this is to put in place a demand charge to recognize that there are costs that are being generated by net metering customers when their panels are not producing. We need to make sure that that's balanced across all customers, and the way to be able to do that in a fair manner is to make sure that there is a demand charge for the energy that you're using. We want to make sure that this also looks at the objectives that we have. During the 5 to 9 period of time, we still look at a customer and all of those resources that you see in that demand cost bucket, generation, transmission line, distribution, substations, because when the solar panels go off, they're needed in the same amount that we see for other customers that are out there. But because of the net metering per kilowatt hour usage that is happening, that trade between banked hours and most expensive hours, it is not covering the cost. A demand charge is the way that we're able to recover those costs. So, as we look at these costs, our proposal to City Council initially was this. During the highest 15-minute period during any month, what you would see is the yellow line that's showing on the screen right now. This is the methodology we initially went forward with to base a demand charge. So basically, if you took inside of any month there, that yellow line, and looked at that as the highest per kW demand that a net metering solar customer was requesting, we would set the rate to be 43 cents times that highest amount, times however many days we have in a billing period. In many of the conversations that we had with customers, and many of the conversations I had with customers, we had two things that we were really trying to make sure that we were addressing. One is that subsidy that's happening across net metering customers, the $5.5 million that's not being covered by net metering rates. The other thing is trying to make sure that we're incentivizing the same type of behavior amongst all 260,000 of our customers.
But this is because you chose to.
Folks,
buy-
we are
we-
going to get into the questions in just a minute, but we all need to share the understanding here, please.
As we looked at and went through this, and we're looking at everything that we're trying to encourage from a behavior standpoint, the thing that came out the most clearly for us as an organization, and the thing that we heard most clearly from our net metering solar customers was, if I hit that highest yellow bar that's out there, I'm going to do that every day in the month if that's what's going to be charged to me from one period that's out there. So in other words, if you charged your, there was some reason that you needed to charge your electric vehicle at the same time you ran your air conditioner and maybe used a clothes dryer, one day in the month, that would have said what was there for the entire month's worth of billing. Our change that we put through this was to look at the on-peak period and look at that from an average standpoint. So if you look at across this chart, there's approximately 20 or 22 bars that are there. So from a demand standpoint, we are able to then go through, and if there was a need for a customer to have a higher usage day where they're pulling more electricity at one time, multiple devices at one time, we're able then to send a clear message to customers, and the other 20-ish on-peak periods that we have, use less devices at the same time. Move some of that out of the 5 to 9 period, and if you're able to do that, your amount that you're being charged for the demand charge would go down.
How can we do that when we're at work?
Yeah, and you know what? Why are you trying to change
And
people's
just to be clear,
behavior by
this is
charging
at
me?
the 5 to 9 period of day that's out there. So this is on peak Monday through Friday, 5 to 9, that we would look at the average across what is the highest amount on each of those on-peak days that are there.
So you price it, you got to use the most.
Everyone in front of
Again, what we're looking at is this is the structure that needs to be there to make sure that we are sending two messages. One, we will have fair, equitable rates that are there for all 260,000 of our customers without having subsidization that's going across that, while at the same time we are trying to make sure that we have behavior that pushes use off the 5 to 9 period when we're experiencing our highest costs as an organization.
I shouldn't pay for changing somebody else's
With that, I'm going to turn
behavior.
it back over to Jay.
All right, folks, now we're going to move into the question and answers period of this evening based on the questions that you submitted ahead of time. As I mentioned earlier, we reviewed all the questions and comments that were submitted through your RSVPs, and we distilled them into key themes that we're going to try to address here so we can address the questions that you have been asking. I'll be posing these questions to our CFO, Tristan, and to our rate design lead, Scott, and we'll do our best to provide clear and helpful responses. We've sent emails letting you know ahead of time that because of the number of attendees and the unique nature of each household's energy setup, we're not going to take individual questions during this setup. But we absolutely do want to hear from you, and that's why we've had this QR code up on each slide tonight, that you can start a conversation with our experts, and we will commit to getting back in touch with you. So with that, let's begin. Scott, can you give us examples of what would drive this demand charge higher or lower?
Yes, similar to the EnergyWise rates applicable to all residential customers now starting October 1st with the transition to EnergyWise rates. We're really focusing on that on-peak 5 to 9 p.m. period. And for most of our residential customers, the way for customers to influence their bill is really to shift usage, and it doesn't have to be all usage, it just has to be some usage. If they're able to move some of their usage to off-peak periods, and that lowers their kilowatt-hour consumption during the on-peak period. For net metering customers, there's really two opportunities to lower the demand charge. And one of them is similar to the rest of the residential customers, and that is to shift usage. If there's certain appliances or uses that you can shift to the off-peak period, that will lower the demand. But also, with the demand charge, there's ability to smooth or spread usage across the on-peak period. And to give an illustration of that, a customer coming home to their home during that on-peak period needs to do 4 things potentially that evening. They need to cook dinner for their family, so they need to start their electric oven. They need to run the dishes. they need to start the clothes dryer, and maybe they have an electric vehicle and they need to charge that. A customer can come home, instantaneously start their oven, run their dishwasher, start their clothes dryer, and start charging their EV. Doing all those things simultaneously will result in a higher demand while those appliances are running. With the demand charge, a customer now has the same price signal that other customers do to spread that usage out. So maybe the first priority is to start the electric oven and feed the family. After that's completed and you can shut your oven off, then start the dishwasher, wait till that cycle's done to start the dryer, and so on. So there are simple, cost-free ways to lower the demand. And then the other thing with the modified proposal, shifting to the average greatest demand during on-peak periods throughout the entire month, there's really, life is complicated, and at times we need to do more than one thing at once, and we do those simultaneously. Shifting to the average demand gives some flexibility to be able to do those things when we really need to, but still influence our bill by trying to make those conscious efforts throughout the rest of the month to shift usage off-peak or spread those major appliances across the on-peak period.
What does any of that have to do with having solar or not? Why is it only applying to solar?
So, remember, we have this QR code, leads to a form where you can ask questions. So let's talk about the subsidy. Let's talk about the subsidy across. If non-solar customers are subsidizing solar in this amount, how much are solar customers also though contributing to resiliency and avoided infrastructure costs?
You want to blame us?
And again, as we look at that subsidy that's going on, approximately $5.5 million that is not being covered by net metering revenues compared to the allocated costs that are there. And again, as we look at that peak period of time, from 5 to 9, when we're experiencing the highest need from our customers to deliver energy, solar is not participating in a large way in reducing that because
But
the panels
solar
are not producing during that
participated in
time.
reducing
So when it
your
comes to
maintenance
the number of transformers, the number of substations, the amount of generation that we need, because the solar panels are not generating during that time, it's coming from all of our resources that are there for our non-solar customers. It's not participating in a large way in reducing the demand during the on-peak, during our most expensive time period.
And what happened
You're
to small
so you didn't
areas?
answer his question.
So we're talking a lot, we've given a lot of qualifiers. So what I want to ask now is, how will these changes affect customers with solar and battery storage versus solar only?
Yes, as we look at the demand charge setup, this is based on net usage during the on-peak period. Let's say the net demand that is pulled during that period of time. If you're a solar customer that has batteries, you wouldn't see a demand charge if you deployed those batteries in such a way that it was covering all of your usage during the on-peak period.
You're making us into batteries?
So that's another $20,000 you want us to spend.
Remember, folks, we're coming up with these questions based on what was submitted. So
How do we
these
know
are
you're
these
coming
are
up
questions
with
that
our
were asked with the
questions?
frequency, so that we can hopefully address many of the questions that you have here
These
by
sound
addressing
like
these
they're
general
cherry
themes. So here's a question that's been asked a number of times. Will existing net metering customers be grandfathered? And what does that potentially look like?
So from a grandfathering standpoint, that doesn't address the $5.5 million that we're looking at. So in any way going through and saying that we're going to expand that for existing customers, it takes that $5.5 million and multiplies it by however many years we would say that we were willing to do that. Again, if we did that over a 10-year time frame, that would be $55 million coming from the rest of our customers to pay for solar customers' decisions. And that's not a place that we're comfortable with.
Why did you bait us into getting solar then? Didn't you plan?
So let's talk about the rate structure. Were there other options? Scott, are there other options that have been considered before proposing this rate structure?
Sure. Colorado Springs Utilities has been participating in statewide stakeholder working groups related to net metering, including customer groups, installer groups, utilities, a widespread representation of stakeholders related to solar and net metering in Colorado, with the goal of hopefully reaching a consensus to help change look at potential changes to the state statute related to net metering, what I would call a legacy net metering statute that really is based on the one-to-one exchange, not only within the billing month, but also month to month after that. Those discussions with that statewide group last year did not reach a consensus of any kind, which really left utilities to work within the current framework of the current state statute. We did look at multiple alternatives, but really it comes down to when you recover demand cost through a volumetric energy charge, you do not recover the cost to provide service to net metering customers because of the nature of the netting, exchanging energy produced at 1 hour of the day and consumed later, either that day, that week, that month, or later that year. So volumetric recovery of demand cost doesn't collect the cost to provide service to customers.
So what's the company shows the power to grid from solar?
We did consider multiple options, and we looked at multiple options of different types of demand charges. Anytime we're designing rates, we really look at the 5 principles that the Utilities Board established for utilities to establish those. And it is economic efficiency, revenue stability, equitable for all customers, and that deals with the cross-subsidization issue, and then 2 customer objectives of customer satisfaction and customer bill stability. And those were prioritized by the board in that order. We did look at different demand charges based off of just any time of day that they occurred. We looked at the on-peak demand charge, more related to the energy-wise messaging. We looked at demand charges, multiple demand charges, one for off-peak, and so on. Balancing those 5 objectives provided by Utilities Board, we landed on the proposal of an on-peak demand charge, balancing really complexity along with some, balancing complexity but cost reflectiveness. We could have designed rates that break out demand and energy charges into on and off peak, seasonal. We decided to keep it relatively simple, but also cost reflective, recovering that demand cost through the demand charge. I would state again that when we look at the modified proposal for utilities, when we modify the proposal based on customer feedback on the difficulty implementing modifications when a demand charge is based on the greatest 15-minute demand of the month, we did see that the impact for the typical net metering customers was about 25 additional dollars compared to the original $50 that was communicated to customers previously. So it's about that change was originally $50 per month was the original proposal, was the impact for the median net metering customer. With the modification to the average demand, that decreased down to $25 increase.
Scott, is that assuming changes in behavior?
That was without any changes in behavior. So again, implementing any of those behavioral changes on shifting usage or spreading usage across the on-peak period can reduce or eliminate those demand charges, considering other things as well.
So 9,000 is going to change the behavior of 251,000? Give me a break. Why don't you have those people change their behavior?
Why are we?
Yeah, I think this is a good time to talk about the EnergyWise open house that was held outside. That was for all customers. And the EnergyWise rates are being applied across all customers. Tristan, is there any update on that?
So as we look at EnergyWise time of day rates for residential customers that are rolling out now, what we see is in about 88% of the time that's off-peak. That would be every time that's not Monday through Friday, 5 to 9. The cost on a per kilowatt hour basis is going down. What we see in the on-peak period, Monday through Friday, 5 to 9, is those costs are going up, and they're seasonally going up. So in the wintertime, they're going up from 12 cents to approximately 16 or 17 cents. In the summertime, they're going up from 12 cents to approximately 36 cents. So the message is clear that we are sending to all of our 260,000 customers. Usage across the on-peak period contributes to higher costs, greater amounts that we have to invest into our systems to be able to serve all of the peak usage of our customers.
Dollar for dollar like Excel does.
So that's talking about energy-wise across the whole customer base. For net metering customers, the question that we were asking, the question that was asked was, if a customer has that one high usage event, for example, electric vehicle charging, how does that affect their monthly bill?
Yeah, great. So in looking at the chart here, it demonstrates that well. So again, as I stated earlier, as residential customers, we heard from our customers, and it's difficult every day to manage those things as life happens. So if there is a particular day where there's a higher on-peak demand set, it is one data point that's averaged along the greatest on-peak reads of the other days during the billing period. And so it is included in the calculation of the demand charge, but it's one of many values that's determined in that average.
So if they have one incident of...
Super simple question. What are the values on this graph?
We would love to have our experts connect with you to talk about your particular situation.
We're your customers, we don't like it.
The intention of this illustration is to show the difference between the earlier proposal for
You
taking the
failed.
highest demand. I'm sorry. We're taking the difference between the highest, calculating on the highest demand versus taking an average demand.
What's the value for the highest and the average?
So
Has this been approved by city council?
Again, when it comes to actual use on a per kilowatt hour basis, it does not recover the demand charges that we are seeing for our net metering customers.
You're basically doubling our charge.
And what we're seeing is that the increase in cost is necessary because right now those costs are not being covered by the rates that are in place. So in order for us to be able to do that, we need to make sure that across all 260,000 customers, we have equity that is in those rates.
So I think there's one question that's coming up from, that came up from a number of customers that we have, and that is, how can customers, I think this is relevant right now, so how can customers access real-time or near real-time usage data to manage their demand charges?
Yeah, so part of the EnergyWise transition for customers was really to beef up our tools that are online. So in the My Account tool on csu.org, there are the ability for the usage dashboard. And drilling into that dashboard, you can see near real-time intervals of your electric usage. So looking into that usage dashboard, you can drill down into the time frame that you're looking for, drill into a particular day, into particular hours, and see the intervals at those 15-minute levels.
So
They can go until 6, 7, 8 o'clock. Oh, yes, I know.
Understood.
So when are you going to show us the data that was there 2 weeks ago that was taken away?
So another question that was asked by a number of attendees was, how do these proposed changes compare to net metering policies at other utilities?
Yeah, so of course, state statute varies state by state in terms of net metering policy, and within Colorado, there's actually different net metering policy applicable to different types of utilities. So really the situation, how that net metering statute applies to different utilities, of course, drives how utilities can respond to the issue of recovering the appropriate cost of service to provide service to all customers, including net metering customers.
Why can Excel make this work when you guys can't figure it out your nonprofit? Anyone?
What customer are sitting here right now? Why would you not answer the questions in the room? The hell with what was written in.
Well, we
So
don't
I'd like to
know
ask
they're
one more
asking what
question.
was written in.
How is customer-owned solar factored into Colorado Springs Utilities' long-term planning for resiliency and peak demand reduction?
So again, as we look at solar, part of what we need to be able to see from a resiliency standpoint is behaviors that change across the on-peak period, because that's where we're experiencing the difficulties from a cost standpoint that's out there. Again, sending price signals that will incentivize customers to move that usage and shift it across and out of the 5 to 9 period helps from a resiliency standpoint, as would the addition of battery systems for any of our solar customers, and that is something that we will continue to look at as we move forward.
You're cherry picking questions.
So,
Meeting at City Council on the 14th
so
of October.
Let's all go to the city
let's
council.
move on to a question that I've got. What percentage of total grid capacity is affected by rooftop solar? And how does this play into this change in bill?
Yeah, so if I was able to hear the question, I believe it was the amount of solar generation provided by rooftop solar compared to the overall portfolio?
Yes.
Yes, so as Tristan mentioned during the presentation, net metering customers their generation represents about 50 megawatts of solar production during those middle parts of the day. Utilities has agreements for approximately 290 megawatts of solar as part of our overall portfolio. And then of course there's other programs or other renewable sources on top of that.
Whatever happened to microgrids that were supposed to balance this out?
You forgot to tell us that when we got solar, you talked us into it.
Again, I'm having a real hard time.
Bait and switch! Bait and switch! Bait and switch!
Being able to answer questions that are being shouted from the audience, I would love to be able to answer them. Half of them I can't hear. We're trying to.
I give you
continue with the
permission,
format.
go ahead.
So, at this point, folks, these are the questions that have risen to the top. So, what we've done is we brought our experts. As you've heard tonight, behavior change is free and can help you avoid some of these demand charges. And that's why we brought. I'm sorry, folks. This is why we brought the EnergyWise booths out into the area. The same behavior changes that we're asking of the rest of the community are going to help this audience as well. So at this point, I want to. So those open house stations are going to be available for you as well to explore EnergyWise time of day rates. Explore some of the tools to help you manage your energy use and connect with staff who can answer questions, as well as using the QR code that you've had available to you tonight.
Can you say class action suit?
Thank everyone for showing up. I thank you for listening, and I thank you for helping us to move forward as a community.
Actually talk about what you propose